Failure should not be taboo or even a bad word, especially for learning. It's an asset that in too many cases we have depreciated into a liability for far too many students. Our academic partners at COGx tend to hold PhDs in cognitive science. They have dedicated their lives to understanding how humans learn. Reaching out to them at first when I created COGx was quite intimidating. For me, especially, given that my journey learning included passing through an abyss of failure. I was labeled mildly retarded at 13, a dreadful term that thankfully no longer is used. And I had dropped out of a community college by 18, so I am intimately familiar with failure. I developed my confidence to discuss it openly, and I now jokingly say that I have a PhD in academic failure, which no academic can match, as they've probably only known A's their whole life. I say this jokingly to underscore how serious this topic is. It certainly isn't easy to watch a learner make mistakes or fail at something. We innately fear that it will curtail their confidence and effort. The risk and benefit to failing are real and dependent on how we treat them, as that affects the learner's attitude towards failure. Allowing a learner to experience failure as a normal part of learning is a very powerful lesson that you can help them to learn. If we fear failure, we're less likely to take risks and to try new challenges. As students advance through their schooling, they accumulate experiences that shape their attitude towards learning and their mindset concerning success and failure. A considerable challenge is the number of students who accumulate a negative attitude towards learning as a result of their failures. These young people are more likely to embrace what is called a fixed mindset when it comes to their own effort and ability. Some of you might know Carol Dweck's work, Growth versus Fixed Mindsets. It helps us explain or understand why some people achieve their potential while others don't. The answer is largely explained by one's perception of failure and, especially, how this failure is attributed. While many students overcome obstacles with an inherent appetite for challenge, others view challenges and setbacks as personal threats and do whatever they can to remove themselves from this discomfort. While it may be difficult to manage an unmotivated student, it is not difficult to understand why a student who has experienced consistent failure would feel such a way towards learning. After all, it is only rational to stop doing something that continues to produce failure and negativity. I also want to underscore that a growth mindset is not a panacea, and most students that benefit from this tend to be the ones that are succeeding. However, to continue in this example of the student, it is very likely that the child is living with weaknesses or gaps in cognition that are inhibiting their ability to learn. Failure is psychologically very undesirable, and it is highly atypical for students to fail without good reason. Asking this student to be motivated and to continue trying can be ineffective and even harmful. Instead, if a growth mindset can be tapped into in tandem with an effective approach to address the underlying cognitive issues, then a real shift can occur. We address this in our micro lesson on how to improve learning. Usually, receiving feedback and reflecting on performance is difficult. This is partially due to the culture of a traditional schooling in which we penalize students for their mistakes. We over-rely on tests to measure learning through summative assessments, and we underutilize tests as tools to foster learning through formative assessments. The reality is that the mistakes are not just good for learning, they're absolutely required for learning. Mistakes are information to guide our future actions and path towards improvement. In the majority of classrooms, learning is assessed through tests and exams, what educators call summative assessments. In these situations, making a mistake lowers your grade. As a result, students are indirectly trained to avoid feedback because it is painful and comes to them at a cost through a low grade. Over the course of our educational careers, we became conditioned to try and avoid making mistakes. Unfortunately, traditional classrooms often equate performance to learning. with the intention of avoiding errors and mistakes in the learning process. We cover this in the micro lesson on academic performance versus learning. The problem with this approach is that mistakes are essential to learning success, and we should see errors as learning trials that are critical to improving. In fact, research suggests that when you give the wrong response and are then corrected with the right answer, this produces stronger retention than simply studying the correct answer for the same amount of time. I'll leave you with a thought. Experts in any field are obsessed with mistakes. They hone in on them. This is called deliberate practice. What they do is they analyze the imperfections in everything they're trying to learn until they become experts. Think how much more powerful that would be for students to embrace the same mindset and pursue failure in order to become successful.